Some worlds are built for war, some for wealth, some for escape. Harvest was built for beginnings. Flat horizons, golden soil, a sky so wide it felt like permission. Humanity did not fortify Harvest, it planted it, and that's why its fall echoed louder than any fortress. Hey everyone, welcome back to Installation 00 and welcome back to the Planetarium. This is the story of worlds, of how they raise us, and how we grieve them when they're taken. Today we visit Harvest, not as a battlefield, but as a cradle. Harvest is gentle by cosmic standards, familiar gravity, forgiving climate, and soil eager to yield. Its plains stretch uninterrupted for thousands of kilometers, broken only by shallow rivers that braid the land like veins. Winds move in long, patient breaths. Storms gather slowly, nights fall soft. This is a planet that invites settlement, not conquest. The fourth planet orbiting Epsilon Indi, Harvest is a broad, generous world, slightly smaller than Earth at just over 4,000 kilometers in diameter, but wide in horizon and familiar in gravity at 0.998 standard Earth gravity. A planet built more for openness than height. Epsilon Indi's two distant orbiting brown dwarfs offer additional nourishing sunlight, but with it tidal forces that accelerate Harvest's day-night cycle to a mere 17.5 hours. The system itself was identified as a prime candidate for human colonization even as far back as the 21st century, when humanity's first exoplanet observatories first turned their lenses to the constellation of Indus, 12 light-years from Earth. Its terrain is dominated by vast continental plains broken by shallow river systems and chains of low, rolling hills, shaped less by violent tectonics and more by slow weathering. Mountain ranges exist, but they are distant things, softened by age and erosion, framing the planet rather than defining it. 1,000 freshwater lakes scatter its surface like mirrors, moderating climate and feeding soil that is dark, loamy and nearly unnaturally eager to yield. The atmosphere is thick enough to hold warmth and moisture in long, forgiving seasons, producing mild winters, bright summers, and winds that travel unobstructed for hundreds of kilometers across uninterrupted farmland, and life thrives easily under its sky. Everything about Harvest's environment suggests invitation: wide fields, breathable air, and a biosphere that does not fight occupation, but absorbs it, blending imported Earth life with native systems until the distinction becomes difficult to see. It is a planet whose natural state feels cultivated, even before the first seed is planted. The colony ship Skiv Blavnir arrived carrying farmers, engineers, and families whose ancestors had crossed oceans before. Lutheran Americans of Germanic and Scandinavian descent stepped onto the plains and found a world that did not resist them. They dismantled their ship piece by piece, folding it into the foundations of the first city, Utgard, like a seed returning to soil. Terraforming was minimal. Harvest required almost no persuasion. The land wanted to grow. Wheat fields spread outward like spilled sunlight, Automated combines moved in silent procession across the plains. Orbital elevators rose above oceans of grain. The planet's 1,000 lakes teemed with fish, air thick with pollen, hummed with honeybees. Starlings and bats carved patterns across open sky, feasting on the wealth of pollinating insects. We spoke to Bjorn Svensen, an elder harvest colonist now living on the colony of Ixon, who was there when the colony was first settled and managed to escape on the first evacuations from Harvest when it came under attack.
I remember seeing Harvest from space as the Skidbaldnir gained orbital. Even from space you could tell it was a lush and fertile world. Getting off the shuttle and feeling the sun on my face, the warm breeze, the sounds of insects and birds, the smell of blooming flowers like jasmine or honeysuckle. None of it was from Earth. Not yet. But it could have been. Close your eyes and it felt like home. It didn't take us long to make it home. I miss it.
Humanity brought Earth with it, not as conquest but as conversation. Magnolia and oak trees took root in foreign soil and did not falter. Broadleaf shrubs, moss, ferns and grasses stitched themselves into the native ecology as if they had always belonged. Orchards bloomed, vineyards rolled over gentle hills, gardens filled the spaces between cities that never tried to rise too high. Some wheat grew so dense that sunlight struggled to reach the ground beneath it. Entire days passed, in blazing gold above, cool shadow below. Fungicide mist drifted in the mornings, farmers waging quiet war against crop-eating blights. Gophers tunneled through fields and were met with rifles and resignation. Even in Eden, labour remained. Every colony ship leaving the inner colonies carried something grown here. Every frontier world settled after Harvest survived its first winters because Harvest had already planned for them. Rayna Neilsen reflects on her first years as a farmer on Harvest.
When we stepped onto Harvest, it didn't feel alien. It felt familiar and patient. Like it had been waiting for us to arrive. It was so ready for us, you couldn't have found a more suitable world. We barely had to till the fields. You could throw down some seeds in the morning and by dinner time they'd taken root.
Cities on Harvest were limited and practical. Rarely did they rise into towering skylines, and even then, they stopped short of arrogance. There were no monuments to ambition, architecture bent towards necessity, leaving as much room as possible for fields that fed entire worlds. Harvest didn't try to impress, it tried to sustain, and it succeeded. Life here moved to agricultural rhythms, sunrise shifts, seasonal festivals, cargo launches measured not in weapons, but in tonnage of grain. Children learned to drive harvesters before they learned orbital mechanics. Families measured prosperity in yield, not profit. It was a quiet prosperity, a humble one. Ingrid Christensen was an agricultural coordinator on Harvest, working closely with the colony's resident AIs, Sif and Mac, during the years leading up to first contact, and reflects on the steady, predictable crop cycles.
Harvest wasn't rich the way core worlds were rich. It was rich in certainty, soil, fertility and yield. You always knew there would be another season, another bloom of growth, another plentiful harvest.
Local ecosystems adapted to humanity gently. Imported livestock thrived, native flora integrated into crop systems. The planet did not resist settlement. It collaborated with it. Harvest became a promise. Humanity could live beyond Earth, and live well. That promise made it precious, but it was not to last. The first sign was not fire. It was a question. An object entered the system that did not belong to any registry. Tiara Station watched it in silence as instruments struggled to describe what they were seeing. Its materials were wrong. Its geometry refused easy classification. It was a visitor that did not resemble any ship humanity had ever built. Harvest did not panic. Harvest prepared a welcome. Images were transmitted, simple gestures of peace, humans offering fruit, open hands, the language of hospitality that had followed our species across oceans and planets alike. A meeting was arranged in the botanical gardens, a place chosen deliberately among growing things under open sky. The alien craft descended gently. For a moment, the garden held its breath. Those who stepped from the vessel were immense, armoured, and deliberate. They did not walk like explorers, they walked like verdicts. Their escorts scanned the grounds with a vigilance that felt less like caution and more like ownership. Corporal Lars Olssen of the UNSC Marine Corps originally enlisted with the Harvest Colonial Militia in 2524. He was amongst the very first humans to ever encounter and fight the Covenant. He remembers first contact.
The aliens were massive. Heavy armor, brutal weapons, at least the ones that landed at the gardens were. The others were shorter, but stocky, carrying big tanks on their backs. I heard the sergeant talking about the taller bird-looking ones that he had faced on an op before this all went down. But the big ones. I watched from a distance as they approached the governor and made even that Goliath of a man look tiny. I don't know what was said, if they said anything at all. I just remember a shot echoing out, a scream, then all hell broke loose. Can't believe that was over 30 years ago now.
The first exchange was brief. Misread signals, misinterpretation, a movement too fast, a weapon discharged in fear or instinct. No one would ever agree which came first. A man fell, then another. The garden erupted into violence. Gunfire shattered glass and scattered birds into the sky. The scent of soil and blossoms mixed with smoke. The visitors withdrew as suddenly as they arrived, carrying their wounded, leaving behind bodies that had come expecting diplomacy. Silence returned, but it was no longer the silence of peace. It was the silence of understanding. The ship did not leave the system. It waited. Messages were sent into the dark, messages Harvest could not hear, decisions made in a language humanity did not yet know existed. And somewhere, far from the fields and lakes, a judgment was passed. This garden was forbidden. The ship returned with others, not as visitors, but as a certainty. The sky filled with geometry that did not belong to nature. Shadows crossed the plains in slow procession, blotting out sunlight that had fed 1,000 seasons. Farmers looked up from their fields and saw a second horizon forming overhead. Alien metal, silent and patient. Harvest did not understand. It was about to become an example. The first strikes were surgical. Communication towers vanished in columns of plasma. Orbital infrastructure peeled apart without sound, scattering debris that burned as it fell. Tiara Station died before most of the planet even knew it was under attack. Then the fleet turned its attention downward. The air ignited. There is a moment before glassing begins when the atmosphere itself hesitates. Superheated, trembling, charged with a violence too large for language. Witnesses describe the sky turning liquid, clouds folding inward, the sun dimming behind curtains of fire. When the beam struck the surface, Harvest screamed. Oceans of grain flashed to steam, soil vitrified in expanding rings, rivers boiled into ghosts and vanished into the air. The wheat that once grew so thick it blocked out the sun became mirrors that reflected the sky's hatred back upon itself. Cities didn't fall, they dissolved. Utgard, the seed city built from the ship that crossed the void in hope, vanished in a heartbeat. The foundations of Skifblavnir melted back into indistinguishable glass, as if the planet were ejecting the memory of our arrival. Hansen Moller was a young resident of Harvest when the attacks left him as an orphan. Though he was very young at the time, he remembers with vivid detail the harrowing sights on the ground.
It was horrible. The city was melting. Rivers of lava flowed through the streets. The heat was suffocating. So many people died. There were no bodies, though. There should have been. But they were just gone. Nothing left except a thick, choking ash coating my skin. It still haunts me.
Forests ignited without flame. Magnolia and oak collapsed into charcoal silhouettes before scattering to ash. Orchards that had taken decades to mature burned in seconds. Bees fell from the air like rain. Lakes erupted into pillars of steam that climbed miles high, carrying with them fish, pollen, and the last breath of a world that had only ever tried to feed us. From orbit, the planet glowed. Not with life, with wound. Survivors fled the system. The lack of contact from the colony prompted an investigation, which was silenced before they could report the findings. A battle group was sent to investigate. Only one vessel would limp away from Harvest, bringing story of the planet burning and an alien shape looming over it. Humanity, wounded by the attack on their garden world and the humble people who tended her, retaliated in a campaign that would last 5 years.
5 years. 5 long years. That's how long it took us to get Harvest back.
Go, go, go! Move on it!
At first it was going well. Then setback after setback. Loss after loss. Made what was going to be a quick and decisive win into 5 years of hell.
The aliens would be driven off, but the garden had been burned. Humanity held onto Harvest as she bled for a further 3 years, unable to commit the resources to heal her, as the Covenant continued to ravage other worlds, and humanity came to terms with the reality that they were at war with a foe far more advanced, aggressive, and fanatical than themselves. 8 years after the Covenant drew first blood at Harvest, they returned. Harvest did not die quietly. Weapons batteries fired until they melted. Evacuation craft clawed at the sky through storms of debris. Families fled across plains that were already turning to glass beneath their feet. Somewhere beneath the thunder, farmers tried to save what they could. Animals loosed from pens, children carried in arms, seeds stuffed into pockets out of instinct older than civilization. The Covenant did not hurry. They erased with precision. The biggest military mobilization in human history fought for half a decade to spare Harvest, but it was a hopeless situation. This was not conquest. There were no terms, no occupation, no banner planted in victory. Only purification. a methodical stripping of colour, sound, and memory from a world that had never raised a weapon in anger until it was too late. When the fleet withdrew, Harvest was still visible from nearly a light year away. A scar bright enough to be mistaken for a star, and still hiding secrets beneath its surface that predated human history on Earth. We were approached by Oni Warrant Officer Arling, who offered her comments on Harvest and how it marked the beginning of a long list of discoveries that were of immense importance to Oni and humanity at large.
Harvest feels like such a long time ago. Oni suspected insurrectionist hijackings. The last thing we were expecting were an alien species, and least of all being the trigger for a 3-decade-long genocidal war. But what we found, what was uncovered on Harvest, spoke to a deeper secret in the galaxy that we were only scratching the surface of.
Silence settled slowly. Where there had been wind moving through wheat, there was only the brittle hiss of cooling glass. Where birds once carved patterns into the sky, there was only emptiness. The 1,000 lakes were gone, the soil that had promised endless seasons lay sealed beneath a shell of black crystal. And yet, beneath the vitrified crust, seeds remained, dormant, waiting. Harvest was wounded beyond recognition, but not beyond memory. The garden had been burned. The idea of it had not. Harvest still turns. That is the first mercy. From orbit, the world looks quiet now. No cargo launches, no orbital elevators threading the sky, no glint of combines crossing golden plains. The vitrified crust catches sunlight and throws it back cold and colourless. A mirror where fields once moved like oceans. The world is not dead, it's waiting. Humanity has not yet returned in force. Not because Harvest is forgotten, but because it is remembered too clearly. The war moved on, the front line shifted, resources were spent on survival, on rebuilding worlds closer to home, and Harvest sits at the edge of human space, wrapped in distance and grief. A pilgrimage postponed. Those who have visited since speak of silence that feels deliberate. Wind slides over glass and produces a thin, brittle song. Beneath the crust, sensors still detect soil, intact, fertile, sealed away like a promise placed under lock. Lakes exist as shadows beneath the vitrification, their water trapped but present. Seeds endure in pockets where heat did not reach. Microbes sleep in the dark, patient as they were on the day we arrived. The garden was not erased, it was paused. One day, ships will come not as refugees or soldiers, but as caretakers. The work will be slow. Glass will be chipped away by hand and by machine. Atmosphere will be scrubbed clean. Water will breathe again. The first green shoot that breaks the surface will not be a symbol of conquest. It will be an apology. And Harvest, if worlds can forgive, may accept it. Until then, the planet waits under its crystal shroud, turning in the dark with the same steady rhythm it held when wheat grew under alien suns, and bees stitched gold between blossoms. It carries the memory of what it was, and the possibility of what it could be again. Some gardens are lost forever. Harvest is not lost. It is sleeping. And sleep, unlike death, carries the promise of waking.
I was here when it started. Back when this place was all sky and wheat and people who thought the worst thing that could happen was a bad harvest. First time I saw this planet, I figured, yeah, this is what we're fighting for. Not flags, not orders. Just a place where folks get to wake up, work their land, and sleep under a quiet sky. We couldn't save it. That's the part that sticks. You carry that with you. Every world after. Every fight. You remember the one you lost. But look at it. It's still here. Burned. Scarred. But turning same as it ever did. That means something. Means the story ain't finished yet. One day we'll come back proper. Not as soldiers. As farmers. Builders. We'll chip this glass away piece by piece and let this old girl breathe again. And when the first green pushes through, I hope I'm around to see it. 'Cause harvest deserves to live.
Thanks for watching. If you like this video, be sure to tap that like button. If you want to see more videos like this, be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Pop a comment down below on things you'd like me to cover in the future or any thoughts on today's video. I'll just quickly take this opportunity to thank my patrons and YouTube supporters: Falcon X003, the singular Contender class Ancilla, Laser and Spartan 0137, two of the triumvirate of mines within the Metarch of my installation. My installation's monitors: Shane, Orion, Spartan 1029, 121 Esoteric Sight, Ashley and Sylphia. the creche of sub-monitors Legion, Ryan, Labrat, Element 0, J3, Mr. Keys, Gunslinger Cult, Evermore's, Personal Devil, Scion Esports, Phantasma, and Tony. My fleet of Strato Sentinels, my most loyal of Enforcers, and every single one of the awesome individuals helping to support the channel over on Patreon. It really does help and allows me to keep doing what I do, and I can't thank you all enough. Huge shout to my Tier 0 Transcendent YouTube members Balaz, Jimbo, and Mori. Thank you for continuing to stand sentry over my installation from all threats metaphysical. And if you would like to help support the channel in a more visceral way, consider jumping aboard as a YouTube member or patron to earn tons of perks, merch, and goodies along the way. Thank you again for watching, take it easy everyone, and find peace in the domain.